May I have your attention, please?
Welcome to Real Gaijin, unveiling the real Japan, an American expat's inside look. Now it's time for another story from the Read My Lips series of podcasts. Summarized podcast.
We are now live.
Awesome.
All right. Well, welcome everyone from around the world. This is Tony R. Vega. I will let him introduce himself in just a second. But before that, I'll briefly introduce myself. I'm Mark Kennedy. I'm the host of the Real Gaijin Substack and also Ask Me Anything series of podcasts. And today we have a special guest who's calling in from Hawaii. That is one of my favorite places in the world. It is now noon in Hawaii. It's 7 o'clock in the morning in Japan. And it's 6 o'clock in the evening in New York. And I have no idea what time it is in Europe, but it's probably late. In any case, thank you for tuning in from around the world. Quick housekeeping. We will be recording this session. Give me about 24 hours and I'll edit this a little bit and then publish it on Substack and then also on YouTube. So, Tony R. Vega, not to be confused with Tony Vega, who's apparently a singer. Okay. And so, Tony, I don't even know how to describe you. You are a digital creator from Hawaii, but originally from New York. Maybe just introduce yourself, please.
Sure. So, like you said, there's a famous salsa singer named Tony Vega. So, that's been yeah, the bane of my existence.
All right,
No,
that's the
but
R.
anyway,
From
yeah. That's
R.
why I put the R in because yeah. Otherwise, you get a bunch of salsa songs on Google.
Ah, okay. Not bad.
But
Yeah.
anyway, yeah, so I am mainly a Japan content creator. So I've been producing content about Japan since 2016. Started just on my own, became professionally involved in this. I became the editor in chief of a magazine here in Hawaii, and I've been podcasting about Japan since 2017. I'm also active on YouTube at the Anime Linguist. That's been growing at a nice pace lately. But basically, all my Japan focused content goes to japankyo.com. That's the blog I started in 2016. And
Okay.
it's just been, compiling there and articles and podcasts and videos and little documentary videos, all kinds of stuff. All the interesting Japan stuff that I can find, I just put it over on japankyo.com.
Got it. Yes. And we put that in the invitation. We'll certainly put that in the write up. By the one thing, burning question here. I understand that you're doing all this despite the fact that you are technically blind, right?
Yes. So I basically have no central vision. Just like basically a huge blind spot in the middle. I use peripheral vision, so for the computer and the phone and stuff, I have to magnify things to a very very like I don't remember it's quite large, but yeah, text to speech stuff like that. I use a white cane when I'm walking outside. I can't see people's faces. I can't see normal sized text. I can see if it's a big sign, I can kind of see like that there's a sign there depending on where I am, but I often can't read what's on the sign. So yeah, this is just I have to deal with it, but I've managed to find ways around some of the limitations.
Yeah, I think you've done that and then some. I mean, that is quite impressive record here so far. Plus, we're going to get into what your plans are in the future for coming back to Japan. But let's back up a little bit. I understand that you're based in Hawaii right now, but everything started in New York, right? Take us from when you came from New York to Hawaii.
Sure. So I was born in New York, and I was there until around 10 years old. My family's originally from Peru. We went to Peru for a while, and then we went to Florida after that. And then once I got into college, then I did my first visit to Japan, and then I did a study abroad after that. That eventually led to JET. So then I started going to Japan, and it was after I was done living in Japan as part of the JET program that I decided to come to Hawaii for graduate school.
I got it, I got it. And then the JET program, so you're actually especially with the name of your main, outlet, which is Kyo, right?
Mhm.
JapanKyo.com. You're literally a bridge to Japan here, just like what the original intention of the JET program is all about, right?
Well, in a sense, yeah, and that's very interesting that you point out the Kyo part. Like I intentionally picked Kyo because Kyo is such a uh versatile it's not a word, but a lot of kanji can be read as kyo, right? It can be
Mm.
the kanji for crazy. It could be the kanji for bridge. It could be the kanji for lens. It could
Oh, okay.
be the kanji for they're like teaching. So kyo can be read a bunch of different ways, especially if you then allow for the elongation of the o at the end. So all of that stuff is you know intended in Japankyo. Like, I was covering crazy weird stories,
Uh-huh.
but also I was trying to shine a light on Japan, and I continued to do that. So, you know, that's like what I ended up doing like more recently, but it was in 2010 when I went back to Japan to participate in the JET program, and I was there for 3 years. And yeah, like you said, yeah, of course I was teaching English, but also part of the idea is to just expose the kids. I was working with elementary school kids, I was working with junior high kids, I was working with high school kids, to expose them to people from outside Japan, different cultures. In my case, I had the opportunity to teach a little bit about Peru and Spanish as well, aside from simply
Oh,
English. So,
wow.
that is part of the when you it really depends on who you work with, where you are, but some teachers give you those little bit of leeway, I guess, that flexibility to do more than just come up with some very basic English lessons.
Yeah, that sounds great. And which part of Japan, were you in at when you were at the JET program?
I was in Kobe.
Oh, okay, in a big city. Oh, how
Mhm.
interesting. And then so you, went back to or you went to Hawaii for a master's program, it sounds like.
Yes, yeah. So after the JET program, I thought I wanted to teach Japanese to it- like well in the U.S. probably, and so I decided well seems like getting a master's degree would be a good thing to do. There aren't that many master's degrees in Japanese language or linguistics offered around the world. And one of the places was here in Hawaii. They have a well-known program for that. And it's Hawaii. So I thought, well, maybe I can get a job here after I'm done with that
Mm,
because there's a big demand for Japanese speakers here more than in a lot of other places. And so I applied. I was very irresponsible in that I only applied to Hawaii and thankfully I got it.
yeah, well, that's pretty
and
good.
Yeah, usually you hear, "Oh, I applied to 10 schools or whatever," and
You know,
you get, like, 1 or 2. In my case, it worked out. I don't
that's
recommend doing that.
good. We're glad to hear
Yeah,
that.
yeah, yeah. But, yeah, and
So,
then I ended
wow,
up
so
coming here. Yeah.
that's true. So are you actually teaching, or is all the other things that you're doing full time at this point?
So, no, I'm not teaching now, like, I have taught Japanese, in Florida. That was before the master's program. That was, like, in between JET well, actually, it was before JET and then after JET, and then I did the master's degree, but, after that, no, I didn't end up getting into teaching because I started working for a magazine,
Mm,
that had a focus on Japan, and I really liked that. I was already doing like Japankyo and all that stuff on my own. I had that interest, and then when a friend, like a grad school friend of mine, told me that she knew somebody that was doing a new magazine, they needed somebody to be the editor. It seemed interesting to me, and so I applied. And then the that's when I was able to show, like, look, I'm already writing articles. I'm covering Japan, and that helped me get that job. And then I
I
ended
see.
up working there for several years.
That's terrific. And then,
Mhm.
so tell us about the impetus for Japan Kyo. I know you alluded to that a minute ago, but how did that come about?
So that was right. Yeah, no, I think that was right after a little bit after I was done with grad school, and I was still trying to kind of figure out what I was gonna do next. I was still taking some extra classes, uh, and I always keep up with Japan news, sometimes more serious stuff, sometimes the really wacky, weird stuff. I'm interested in the pop culture stuff and the anime stuff. And I was noticing that there were a lot of stories, oftentimes really silly, funny stories that were either not being translated into English or it would take like 3, 4, 5 days, 6 days a week. Uh,
Mm,
and I was, consuming this and I was going like, "Okay, I could just do a little blog and kinda translate this. It'll be good practice for my own translation, abilities." And you never know, like, something could come out of this. And so I started doing that, and I would pick oftentimes really crazy stories and really stuff that I thought would, get attention. And it ended up working out pretty well because quite a few of the stories ended up going viral and getting cited by like major publications around the world. Like I got Newsweek one time to cite one of my stories.
cool.
Like NPR cited one of my stories. Like major publications, The Sun, Vice News. I had several stories
Mm,
that got a lot of, attention, and so that was cool, but then I got to the crossroads where I went like, "Okay, I can keep doing this, and I'm gonna make a little bit of money from ads and stuff," but in
mm,
reality, like, I've always been interested in talking to people and interviewing them, so then I started shifting towards the podcast because I wanted to make it a little bit more focused on that personal interaction and who I
mhm,
am,
mm.
and then that's when I decided to start Japan Station.
That's great. And
Mhm.
so, tell us about the readership of Japan Kyo and then also the viewership for your podcast. Who's primarily listening in and reading?
Sure. Well, it's really tough to say who's reading because there's no concrete demographics like YouTube gives you. So, what I can say
Mm,
is like when stories would go viral, it was just crazy. Like I don't know the entire world. But most of the time, especially these days, I don't normally write articles. I'm mainly focusing on the podcast and the YouTube stuff. So the
oh, okay.
podcast right now, I only have one show that's going on. It's my main show. It's the first one that I started, Japan Station.
Mhm.
And right now that one is focused on like culture, travel, and language. Those are kind of my main 3 areas. Now I do kind of go into a little bit of pop culture every once in a while. I might go into something a little bit like yokai and that kind of stuff. But I've been trying to focus on, my passion, kind of the language, the quirky language stuff. The culture has been doing really well. That it's been ranking like at the top of when you search for Japanese culture, Japan Station has been, like, number 1, number 2, like, recently, so it's been doing well in that regard, and travel, of course, is very popular, so I always try to throw in a little bit of, travel adjacent stuff, talking about recently, like, hiking and that kinda stuff. So that is quite clearly, that, demographic of people interested in Japan content. It seems Japan Station is reasonably well known in the audio only podcast sphere. So I'm happy with how it's going. I can't say exactly who's listening because again, same kind of thing with the blog. Like podcasting is decentralized.
Yes.
It's not like here, like Substack, right? Where like you can see who's following you. Eh, with a podcast, you have multiple platforms and they're all distributing your show, and you don't know exactly who's following you, who's subscribed. All you can really see is are the numbers going up or down? And well, thankfully
Oh,
they've been going up, but I can't really go into more detail with that.
okay. I get it. I get it. But you must get some questions, feedback, or is that functionality available on the other platforms? Or maybe not.
Well,
Huh?
yeah, people I've
Oh,
gotten emails from time to time, but also, like, the Patreon supporters, they're the ones that are usually the most, active. They will request an episode idea,
no,
they'll DM me directly, so, yeah, I definitely interact with people, especially on the Patreon side.
that's good. And so, I mean, certainly what's been in the news a lot lately over here as it
Mhm.
relates to tourism in particular is the over tourism trends in certain parts of the country, not certainly in the countryside, but in Kyoto or
Mhm.
even in Tokyo, Osaka. Do you get people that are concerned about that tuning in or
Well,
asking questions?
I've never had any of my, listeners that have reached out, like, bring up that topic, uh I yeah, I don't know, like, to me, I think a little bit of that is, of course, the media is focusing on that. It's not an irrelevant issue, but like you said, it's not the entire country, right? Kyoto, Tokyo, maybe Osaka a bit, but a lot of the rest of the country is more like, all right, send us some of those tourists.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. Well, you've been there, done that with your
Yeah.
walk. Uh, all right. That's great. And then, by the way, before we go on to that, though, you are also the host of other podcasts, right? Like Ichimon Japan, etc. You still doing all those?
So I've done multiple shows since 2016. Ichimon Japan was my second podcast under Japankyo. Basically, that show I've stopped, but I'm doing the same kind of content on Japan Station. I just decided to put it all under Japan Station because it was just it's just more complicated when you say, well, actually, I'm doing two podcasts. So instead, I'm just Japan Station. That's the show. Everything that you were going to get in Ichiban Japan, you're going to get it in Japan Station anyway. So yeah, that's been consolidated. I've done a Hawaii focused show, which was a very
Oh,
like Radio Lab, NPR kind of radio documentary style
mm,
show called Transmissions from Hawaii. You can find it on YouTube. It's not on Apple Podcasts anymore. But that show, like I love that kind of like radio documentary style. And I tried to emulate that. I'm very proud of what I did in that show, but it was just too time intensive to justify the investment of time, right? Because time is money and I need to live off of what I'm doing. And that was back when I was working at the magazine. So I did that for the magazine, but we decided not to continue it because it was like I said, it was just taking too much time to produce. And I've done
right.
a couple other things too, but yeah, yeah. I
I know
enjoy
you do.
creating content,
You're a busy
but
guy.
yeah. Yes.
Okay. So the bottom line is, if you want more Tony R. Vega, you got to go to the Japan channel. Okay,
Yeah.
that's pretty clear. That's very straightforward. Uh, but you did mention this before. There's one more, the
Mhm.
Anime Linguist, right?
Yes, 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 yes. So,
Okay, what's
uh,
that?
okay, so that is uh, a YouTube channel that so the channel itself has been around since the beginning of Japan Station because that was basically where I dumped all my podcast episodes. But I started like the thing with YouTube is uh, generally speaking, unless you're already well known and all that, podcasts don't do all that well on YouTube. Um, Japan Station, like I said, was dumping my shows. Views got some episodes got a lot of views and all that. Most didn't. And I'd been wanting to do YouTube for a while, but because of my eyesight, I'd always been hesitant. Like, can I edit this stuff? Is it going to look okay? Camera position, all that stuff, right? But
Mm-hmm.
I got more serious about it. I started experimenting, and then I guess it was last year I started thinking, okay, what can I do that maybe other people can't do or can't do as well? And so I thought about like the two main areas that well, there's other areas that I'm interested in, but two big areas that I'm focused on. Anime, I love that kind of stuff, and I love language. And so I started thinking, okay, maybe I can approach anime from kind of a more language focused perspective.
Mm-hmm.
And then I started experimenting with videos like that, explaining things in, for example, Dragon Ball, JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, and they started doing very well. Tens of thousands of views on some videos, and I started getting just one video, hundreds and hundreds of subscribers sometimes, and so I saw that that was working, and so now I'm releasing videos regularly over there. And not every video is super language focused. Sometimes I maybe I'll talk about music or something like that, but always anime focused. And like I said, it's been doing quite well, so I continue to produce videos, and I intend to keep growing that side of things as well.
That sounds good. I'm going to check that out.
Mhm.
All right, I gotta admit though, I'm not into anime. You probably guessed that. You're a classic Gen Xer, or as my sons called me, boomer. But I'm not a boomer. I'm an Xer. But the bottom line is, I'm not really into anime. But I have always kind of enjoyed reading the Japanese text. Are you then explaining uh, all of these different sounds, onomatopoeia, for example, that are included in the anime text itself in Japanese, and then you explain what that means in English?
I have done a video about, JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, a manga anime that is known for having very unique onomatopoeia. So I
Okay.
explain that. You know, like, there's other videos that I've done where, for example, there's a certain song in Dragon Ball that has some really weird lyrics, so I
Mm,
talk about that. A lot of puns and jokes are very language, obviously puns are all language, right? So, I'll break down and I'll explain that kind of stuff. So, not every single video is like super linguistic-y, but whenever I find something interesting in the language, like that's like, oh, this is perfect. And so, I do have quite a few of those videos.
okay, well, I'm going to check that out. But Tony, I'm curious. So, apparently, a lot of Japanese anime and also, of course, manga are
Mhm.
starting to really be translated into English and other languages. How are those nuances of the Japanese language translated accurately into another language, if at all?
So that is another area that I do cover, especially related to Dragon Ball. Um, back in the '90s, it was very common to basically change it, like change the anime or the manga, to censor it, to edit, to make it so that it was more appealing to, the American audience, changing the music. It was
Oh,
like a different property a lot of times. However, that has changed quite a bit. Nowadays, it's generally not, thought of as a good thing to do that. People,
mm,
will be very vocal online. They want it to be as close as possible to the original.
mm,
That being said, though, there's plenty of things that can't 100% be translated,
mm,
and preserve the original intended meaning and the subtext without, at the very least, a footnote. But
mm,
if you're talking about a dub, you can't really
mm,
include unless I guess you could include a footnote on the screen. With a manga, I
mm.
guess it might be a little bit easier because you can include like a footnote section maybe at the end. But I mean, it doesn't matter what language you're talking about. When you're talking about translation, you do have to, choose what to prioritize, like exactly a literal thing, a little literal translation, or are you gonna try to keep more in line with the spirit and focus on conveying that rather than the exact wording, and you have to kind of reach a compromise most of the time, and that's fine. Like, the goal of a manga, of a localized or localized manga or anime, should be to uh provide an enjoyable experience that reflects the original source work as closely as possible, but still being enjoyable, natural, approachable. But sometimes you have to leave stuff out, and that's when I can do a
Yeah.
video about it. So, you know,
All
for the
right.
most part, it's
Fantastic.
much, much better than it is. But every once in a while, you still do get, like, something like, but that's just how these things are. You can't get everything perfect.
Yeah, well, okay, yeah, but, you need somebody to decipher all that, so I'm looking
Yeah.
forward to checking out. So the
Mhm.
Anime Linguist is the name of the YouTube channel.
Yep. Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
got it. We'll send people there too. Excellent. All right, I'm curious. You talked a little bit about this before on how you're using technology to overcome, the challenges you have with being visually impaired, but, what specifically do you do? I mean, like, for example, if I know we've been corresponding by email before this, do you have some system to read out the email? Is that how you do it?
So, for usually most of the time, especially for like an email or something like that, because it's not like a super long text, I would just use magnification. So Windows,
Oh,
I use Windows. There's a Windows magnifier program, and I set it to, whatever the magnification is that I need, and that's it. Like, I can get by with that for the most part. Uh, Even with magnification, there's some things that can be really tricky to see. Certain images, photos, things like that, especially if it's, not particularly high contrast, it can be difficult to make out some things, but, that's something that you can't really do too much about that. If it's for longer text, like especially if I'm reading a book, or like sometimes I have to read academic articles when I'm doing research for a podcast or a video, I'll use text to speech, because otherwise, when you use magnification, it's slower. Like you can't read as quickly as you would if you were to just read at normal size text. So it would take forever to read anything that's of any significant length. So I have to use text to speech to do that. And yeah, like between those two things, I can do most things. And if it's really something that, like I said, like a picture and image, sometimes I just have to ask somebody.
Yeah, okay, but it sounds like you've found a way around all that. Terrific. And this has led you to establish something called the Blind Japan Project?
So, like a couple years ago, I was thinking again, I guess, yeah, like the YouTube thing. Like, what can I do that is different from other people? Like, there's a lot of people creating Japan focused content, um,
Mhm.
but like unless you have an interesting perspective, right? Like, unless you do something a little bit different, it's like, okay, more of the same. And so I was thinking, all right, I want to do something Japan focused. I want to do something that will appeal both to a Japanese audience and an English speaking audience, because I have a decent following on X of people from Japan as well. And so the idea that I came up with, kind of a longer story, but the short version is, I thought, okay, I can walk the Tokaido. I can document this. I can post in real time, as I make my way along the
Yeah.
Tokaido, the 500-kilometer road that's between Tokyo and Kyoto, and show the journey, right? Show the trouble, show the problems that I encounter, talk about them, show how I overcome them. And
Mm,
along the way, show a little bit about Japan. My camera skills are, of course, not good or anything like that. So, I'm not expecting to be able to do like a cinematographically beautiful thing or anything like that. It's more
mhm.
about my personal journey.
Yeah,
I think it went reasonably well. I think it got a good amount of impressions on X. It was a good experience for myself. And that also led to doing another walk, and now another walk coming up. I think I'm happy with the choice, and the kind of uniqueness that I was able to find in what I did.
got it. And so on these walks that you've done so far, is this partially to support an advocacy effort, to have, for visually impaired people, or is this not just for fun, I imagine?
It's not actually, it's not that fun. um,
Wow. Oh,
there's
no.
there's fun moments, but like 80 to 90% of it is not fun.
Okay. Well, I imagine, yeah, trucks going by at high speed, right? Okay.
Yeah,
So, but
yeah,
all right, take us back though. So on the Tokaido, your first one, did you start
yeah.
in Kyoto or did you start in Tokyo?
So I started in Kyoto. That
Okay.
was in the fall of 2023.
All right, great. And
Mhm.
so tell us, how did you do this? Did you know how far you're going to walk each day, or did you kind of just play it by ear and then figure out where you're going to stay along during the day?
So basically, especially that first time, I didn't I didn't really know like what was a good goal, right, for each day. I kind of had an estimate because I was walking here in Hawaii trying to get an idea of what I could do realistically, but it's different walking here in Hawaii to like, mountain roads across Shiga Prefecture. So it it was tricky, but basically what my system, and it hasn't really changed. I have an idea. Well, now I'm better at it, but basically I have a hub where I go back to at the end of the day, and then the next morning I get on the train, go back to where I left off, the
Oh,
previous
oh, okay.
evening.
Oh, I see.
Because there's a lot of places that, well, there's just nowhere to stay, right? Well, most
Mm,
of the areas that I'm walking through are not city areas at all.
right.
There's no way that unless I'm like sleeping in a rice field or something, like you can't do it. So, um, basically, I ended up settling that 20 kilometers
Mm,
was the safe goal because um even though, like, if I were to walk in a straight line without ever having to worry about getting lost, I could probably walk more. I end up getting lost. There's a lot of very hard to walk through areas where there's, like, no pedestrian area,
Right.
literally, trucks, going by me, I'm on the white line. This isn't running, this is me, like, literally walking through rural Japan, areas that probably nobody's walking through for the most part. So walking 30 kilometers, 40 kilometers for me is usually not a realistic thing. I've done like 30 something kilometers one day, I think, and it was not a good idea. So yeah, 20 kilometers usually is what I go for. Sometimes a little bit more, sometimes a little bit less. But my average, I think, is usually around 20 kilometers. My goal is a certain train station.
Mm.
I usually stop along the way, whether it's at other train stations or convenience stores to use the restroom, to buy a drink, or to just take a break. But yeah, the end goal start at a train station, end at a train station, take that train back to wherever I'm staying at for the evening at the end of the day.
I got it. That makes a lot of sense. Well, 20 kilometers is still quite a bit, especially considering all of the obstacles that, particularly, you would have to navigate. Plus, I know actually from personal experience because I rode a bicycle along the Tokaido around the same time a couple of
Mhm.
years ago, way back when it was literally the only road in town, right? There was only one way. It would be relatively easy to navigate. But now, uh, yes, some of the old sections are preserved, but then then all of a sudden it stops. And then what do you
Oh
do?
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
So,
It and it cuts through little neighborhoods and, um, yeah, it's, sometimes, like, and it's Google Maps, right? So I can't just tell Google Maps, "Take me down this road." No, like, I have to put in the destination, and then it'll take me the quote unquote "shortest route," which is often zigzagging through little rural neighborhoods, and it can be a headache, like, when it should have just been like, "Take me down, National Highway number 1," and that would have been, like, the much easier way, but Google Maps doesn't do that. So yeah, it's
sure.
complicated.
So tell us about how you were, well, you must have met a number of people along the way, many of whom were probably very helpful, but also kind of surprised that you would endeavor to do this. Tell us about some of the
Yeah.
people that you met.
So I mean, in terms of the surprise people, like, this is something that would happen quite a bit where I would be walking in some rural area, and either somebody would come up to me or I would be in need of asking somebody for directions. So I'd ask them like, "Oh, I'm looking for this train station. Like, do you know, am I nearby?" Uh, And, more than once, like, several times, people go like, "Oh, are you sure? Like, it's like 5 kilometers, like, I can drive you there, like, it's really are you gonna
Ah,
walk? Like, no,
you're
like,
right.
it's really far, are you sure? Like, no, no, trust me, like, I can walk this." I've done, like,
Yeah.
200 kilometers already, I think I can walk 5 more.
Yeah, but I imagine that there are lots of very friendly people though to help you
Oh,
along
yeah,
the
yeah,
way.
yeah. Plenty of really nice people. There's been like maybe 2 times, 3 times where I did end up accepting the ride because they were just very insistent that, "Look, there's nowhere to walk in this stretch. Let me drive you like the 500 kilometers." Not 500 kilometers, 500 meters.
Well,
Um,
the 5
500
kilometers.
meters.
Okay, got
Um,
it.
yeah,
500 minutes, yeah.
because, like, this area is just trust me, it's dangerous, you don't wanna walk there, and
Yeah.
they're really insistent, I go like, "Okay, like, I understand you're very concerned, and it probably is an area that I shouldn't be walking through. Okay, thank you." And they'll take me down a little bit. Um, there's been people that have walked with me for a few hundred meters and go like, "Okay,
Mm,
so you wanna go here, da, da, da." For example, another time, this was a really funny time, like, I was, probably was Shizuoka, but I'm not 100% sure. I was looking at the map and, well, the phone, Google Maps, and it was telling me, "Oh, you gotta maybe, like," I think it was like maybe make a left or something. And I was trying to find that left, and in the process of trying to find the left, I ended up walking into somebody's property. Uh, and it didn't I didn't notice that it was somebody's property because it was a very big gate. It just seemed like it was part of the street. But I was on their property. I was looking at my phone, and then from like the left, I hear a man like saying something like, "Oh, what is it? Onidan," or something like that. Like, was like calling out to me, right?
mm,
Hey,
mhm.
young guy. At first, I didn't realize that he was talking to me because why would anybody be talking to me? I was just busy trying to figure out. where to go next. And then I realized, oh, he's talking to me, and he sounded angry. And he goes like, "This is my property. What are you doing?" Right? He's talking to me in Japanese. Thankfully, I know Japanese. I can understand what he's saying, and I explain like, "Oh, well, blah blah. I can't see very well. I'm looking for this place." And his attitude changed completely. He went from like a scary old, almost like yakuza-ish kind of sounding guy to like, "Oh, let me walk you across the street. Actually, look, I'll cross with you. And then there's these stairs, and then you go down the stairs. You're gonna take a left, and then you're gonna take a right, and you're gonna be at the station." Like he completely changed once he realized like what was going on, and it was so interesting. It was so like obviously like this guy shows up and he's on your property. You're gonna be kind of like, what the hell are you doing?
Yeah.
But once he realized he turned into such a nice guy.
Oh, well, I'm glad to hear that worked out well. Good. Otherwise, we wouldn't hear from you. Okay, good. Did you meet any other visually impaired people along all of these walks?
That is a really good question. And yes, I did actually. So
Ah,
um one day I was in Shizuoka city. Pretty sure it was yeah, it must have been yeah, it was Shizuoka City, yes. And I was, looking for a shop. It was, after I was done walking, and I was, looking for an ASICS shop. I think I was looking for some shoes. I was looking at my phone trying to find the shop, and then a lady, and I believe it was her husband, they asked me like, "Oh, hey, do you need any help?" Because I had my cane, I was looking at my phone, and then she says, or well, the husband or one of them says like, "Actually, he's legally blind too." And like, "Oh, really? Oh my god, wow." And so we start talking, and she worked at a school for the blind, and so I start telling her about like all that I was doing. She's like, "Oh my god," but both of them like, "I can't believe that is what you're doing." Blah, blah, blah. We exchanged business cards. They took me
great.
to the shop that I was looking for. They were extremely nice. So she's not visually impaired, so she saw me with the cane, and she saw me that
Mhm.
I was like trying to figure out where I was or something like that, looking on the phone. And so then she and the husband went over to help me out, and so that was really nice.
That is a good experience. And
Mhm,
so I'm curious though, I mean, people that are visually impaired in Japan, I imagine, are all sorts of different people. But have you met anyone doing the kind of extraordinary trip that you're making here? Or is it just blows their mind that anyone would even try to do that?
well, I've never met anybody visually impaired that has done what I've done. I've met a lot of visually impaired people in Japan, because I did work at a school for the blind as well while I was on Jet.
Oh,
Uh,
mm,
but in terms of something like what I was doing or what I've been doing, not really. I mean, I've never met anybody that has walked the Tokaido, even like a visual,
mm,
like fully sighted person either. I don't think it's that common of a thing to do.
mm.
Like I said, it's not really that fun. I think
Well,
cycling is far more popular for that kind of thing. Like walk
yes.
there's just long stretches of nothing interesting, and I really don't recommend people to walk it. Walk some areas. There's some really
Yeah.
nice areas.
Yeah.
Walk those areas
Well,
or cycle it like you did, Mark. Yeah.
Well, frankly, I mean, I totally agree with you. I mean, you're
Mhm,
right, especially with the truck traffic on some roads,
mhm,
it can be a little dangerous too. But
mhm.
there are some pockets along the way, and I imagine you found this on your other routes too, that are
Mhm.
literally pretty close to what they looked like 400 years ago.
Sure,
I
yeah.
imagine you like those spots. Good. And so, what were the other routes that you took besides the Tokaido?
Last year in 2024, in the fall of 2024, I walked, uh, yeah, pretty much, I guess you would call it the Sanyo line. So, people may be familiar with the Sanyo main line or the Sanyo Shinkansen line, that goes from, basically the start is, Osaka or Kobe. I'm not sure I think it's the technical start might be Kobe. Although the Shinkansen I think goes to Osaka. But either way, that area to, uh well, Yamaguchi,
Mhm.
that's basically the main Sanyo line. But
Yeah.
I walked from, where I left off the previous year, Kyoto, Sanjo Ohashi, Sanjo Bridge, to, my goal was Miyajima, the island, off the
Yeah.
coast of Hiroshima. Beautiful island with a big torii gate, like in the ocean, high tide, it seems like it's floating on the ocean. Um, that was my goal, but I ended up with an extra day, so I walked 20 more kilometers, made it into Yamaguchi Prefecture to Iwakuni. That was
Ah,
around 400 kilometers.
Okay, that's a pretty big trip too. Yeah, well,
Mhm.
we did that spot too on a bicycle, but walking would take a lot longer. Great. Okay, so I'm leading up to what's coming up. What's the plan for the next month?
Sure. So starting on September 29th of 2025, I'm going to be doing my third big walk. Uh, it's going to be the longest walk yet. I haven't finished the count because I'm still tweaking the schedule. It will be over 500 kilometers. And so I'm going to pick up where I left off last year, Iwakuni. And my goal is to make it to Kagoshima Chuo Station, so that's like the main station in Kagoshima, but I'll probably end up going to Sakurajima, more picturesque ending. So, that'll be an extra, like, 5 kilometers, I think, walking, and then I take the ferry to Sakurajima. So kind of like I did with Miyajima, like, I walked to the ferry station, then took the ferry. Uh, so that September 29th, it'll probably end up taking me a month, or pretty much a month, and it's gonna be, I think maybe the most challenging one in the sense that, there will be some very rural areas that I'm gonna be walking through because Kyushu is just less populated. But it's also gonna be really, really interesting. For example, there's gonna be a stretch across, Kagoshima that's like 115 kilometers that's, like, all along the coast.
Mm.
And I think that's gonna be a really, really interesting stretch. Not a lot of people, a lot of probably, like, fishing villages and stuff like that, but thankfully, there's regular train stations. So, I'll still be able to continue doing, what I do where it's like, stop along the way at train stations and then make it to a train station and then take it back to my hotel.
Well, it sounds great. And as you know, I live in Kyushu now. I think you're going to have a fantastic time, especially in the rural parts of Kyushu. People are extraordinarily friendly. And
Mhm.
I imagine you're going to be welcomed wherever you go. Are you going to try and, like you've done with the Tokaido and Sanyodo, the traditional highways of the past, there's one in Kyushu called Nagasaki Kaido, which goes from
Mhm.
Moji to Nagasaki. Are you going to try and walk along that area at all? It's kind of
So
not too much is left of it.
yeah, so I considered, an alternate route where I might have crossed through that area where I would have gone from Hakata and then eventually, gone through, well, I would have gone Hakata, Saga, Nagasaki along that train line.
Mhm.
But it ended up being more inconvenient, seems like even more rural. So for the most part, I'm just gonna stick to the Kagoshima main line. Maybe I might take a shortcut here or there, because it's very curvy. So whenever possible,
Yeah.
I'd like to try to, cut out some of those curves to save on distance. But no plans right now for the Nagasaki area.
Oh, okay. Oh, okay.
Mhm.
Well, yeah. Well, this actually goes from there to Moji, but no problem. Sounds like you've got it under control.
Mhm.
And hopefully, I don't know if you'll have time for a detour around the 100-kilometer caldera of Mount Aso. That would be a little bit of a large detour for you, but
Yeah, yeah.
okay.
Generally speaking, I'm trying to stay away from mountains, mountain passes. Uh, yeah,
Yeah.
those
Good
tend
luck
to
with
be
that.
like Okayama. Like I ended up on this one road where literally it was like a cliff on the side. Like oh my god, like I don't want to walk through these areas.
Yeah. Well, Kyushu has a lot of that along the
Yeah, yeah,
volcanoes. All right.
yeah.
Well,
So
good.
that's why I'm
Well, that's
mainly
pretty.
sticking to the Kagoshima main line because it's mainly coast.
Yes. Okay, good. And, well, it's gonna be a wonderful trip, lots of wonderful food along the way too. And
Yes,
so you're
yes.
gonna have daily reports on japankyo.com, I imagine?
So for the daily posts, they are only on social media. So
Oh,
I
okay.
will be posting in English. It's best to go check out the Instagram, which is at Tony R Vega, and I'll be posting videos and photos there. I'm also very active on X, but and
Oh,
that's at the Vega Tony. But that is there's a lot more Japanese language content over there. So if you want
mm,
that, check that out. Either one, but, it won't be until after I come back from the trip that I'll do a podcast or maybe a video about it,
mhm,
because
okay,
I just wouldn't have time to do that while I'm on the road.
okay. But we can track your daily, progress, though, by checking out social media posts.
Yep, yep, yep. You can check that out,
Okay.
and there will be
Okay.
daily updates. Yeah.
Good. And so, as part of the Japan or Blind Japan project, I mean, to what extent are you trying to use this experience of walking these historical routes to also support advocacy efforts for visually impaired people?
Sure. So, I'm a board member of the Hawaii Association of the Blind. I have been since like 24. Well, board member more recently, but I've been a member since like 2014, I think. Uh, and so,
Mm,
I've been involved with that kind of stuff, advocacy and all that for a long time now. One thing that, and this might just be my attitude as somebody that writes stories and tells stories and does content. Like, it's great to say, like, we should be more aware of the visually impaired and this kind of stuff and the problems that we face. That's
mhm,
important and that's necessary, but I think it's also, um, necessary to show these things and to present them as a story to, like, show real experiences, and give them context and, wrap them within a larger narrative. And so that's what I'm trying to do through, these walks. Of course, I have an audience of people that enjoy Japan focused content, and I can talk about, what I learned about staying in hotels for like 2 months straight, and I can give tips for hotels and that kind of stuff. And I've done
mhm,
episodes like that, but there's this other aspect of it where by simply showing that it's possible for me to do this, and by talking about how I do it and the problems that I face and how I overcome those problems, I'm, you know, raising awareness. I'm advocating for, the importance of public transportation. The fact that Japan has such an
mhm,
incredible train system is
mhm,
largely why I feel comfortable doing this.
mm,
And it's what gives people like myself who can't drive
mm,
independence. That's one of the reasons why I love Japan, because so much of the US, you can't be fully independent unless you
mm,
drive. You're always relying on somebody else. Uh, in Japan, you don't need that. So, so much of this is trying to show these things without being preachy about it, without
mm,
beating people over the head with it, without being, obvious about it. It's doing it in an organic way that hopefully, to some extent, some people will find interesting and fun and entertaining. Like, if they enjoy the fact that, one day I had to complain about like not having dinner because whatever, like there's these funny stories that happen along the way. That's entertainment, that's fine, but it's getting them to pay attention to, like, a bigger issue at the same time. So, that goes
yeah,
back to, like, what can I do that's a little bit different from everybody else?
mm,
What's important to me? And I was able to find this kind of intersection between these 2 aspects of who I am and what I'm interested in.
yeah. No, that's great. And hey,
Mhm,
I'm curious. One thing that Japan is famous for, and I hope it's helpful, is the raised. I don't know would you call it, the raised equivalent of braille for a pavement, right?
mhm.
Built into sidewalks. Is well, first of all, does that help at all, or is it
Um,
adequate or not adequate?
so I've heard, from 1 or 2 people that there are people that don't like those, that, maybe I'm not sure if those people were visually impaired or had some other, disability. But for me personally, like, and I know that for some other visually impaired people that I've met, yes, it is
Hmm,
helpful. Like, for me specifically, it's not like I solely rely on that or anything like that, but there are instances where they have been helpful. In train stations, for example,
mm,
if you follow those, it'll often take you to either a restroom or the kaisatsuguchi, the turnstile, or the exit. Like, those are gonna lead you to the important areas that you want to go. So if you get lost and you can't see, you might wanna start by following those blocks. They call it the kiroi tenji broku, which is the yellow,
yeah.
braille blocks. That's the literal translation of that.
That's
Um,
what it. Oh, okay.
the,
I didn't know what that was
tactile
called.
walkways, I think they're called something like that in English.
Mm,
But it
tactile
outside
walkways.
of the yeah, outside of the train stations, sometimes
Mm,
they can also be helpful. Like if I'm walking around a new area that I've never been to, and then I suddenly come across, like the end of the line for those, I go, oh, I must be near like an important city area. And sometimes that'll go like, okay, so maybe I'm near the train station, and I kind of follow that along. So yes, they definitely can be helpful. And I imagine they might even be even more helpful if you're completely blind. Because I'm still
okay.
able to kind of see some, I can rely on a combination of things. But that is one
Mm.
thing that I have used in the past to orient myself.
Oh, that's good to know, and I'm glad to hear it.
Mhm,
With regards to these tactile, raised braille,
mhm.
surfaces then, first of all, are they everywhere in the country, or is it only, I mean, as you say, in the train stations in big cities? I mean, what's is it adequate for trying to walk across a portion of the country like you're doing?
Uh, that well, it's not adequate for walking across the country,
Okay, so it's mainly the
but
cities.
yeah, yeah. But just about any reasonably populated area with, like an okay sized like train station, not like the little one room, like, one bench kind of places, but something a little bit bigger. Um, they have these. And I've been
Oh,
surprised by some areas that were by no means like, particularly urban, but they had extensively long, like, stretches of these, tactile walkways around the train station.
mm,
Like, the point where I go, like, nobody's using these. Like, why is there so much of this? So I've been pleasantly surprised by how
okay,
much
good.
of this
Huh,
is around the country. On top of that, there's also like the audible crosswalks. There's
yes.
also the fact that I think pretty much any turnstile in Japan makes a noise. Like a lot of them will just
Mhm,
be like a little like like not a beep quite, but like a little chime, and
yeah,
that can be extremely helpful, especially when I'm in these more rural areas where, like, I can actually hear what's going on around me rather than, like, Tokyo where, a bunch of noise. I'll be looking for the train station, then I hear the boom from the turnstile, I go like,
mm,
"Okay, must be to the right. Okay, I'm heading in the right
yeah,
direction." So, like, this combination of all this stuff is helpful. Um,
good.
I'm sure that I'm not the only person that would say that. Does it fix everything? No, but I much prefer having audible crosswalks and little things
Mm.
like this than not having them. It definitely does help.
And yeah, I'm glad you brought up the audible crosswalks. I was trying to think before we got on here, if I were in your situation, how would I do this? And yeah, the audible crosswalks seem to stand out. I don't recall that being so prominent, such a prominent feature anywhere else besides Japan. Do you see that
Mhm.
in Hawaii, for example, or not parts of mainland United States? Or
So it varies greatly from city to city, and I haven't traveled that extensively across the US, but I hear stuff. In Hawaii, there's a few crosswalks that I know of. Not that many. It's not that common. I've been to a few cities in Japan and in the mainland that yeah, do have them. I've heard that it's increased, but I again I don't think that for the most part I don't think it's that common. Whereas in Japan, again, especially in the areas around the train stations, it is pretty common. They're very audible. It's just very convenient, but it also goes back to the fact that most of Japan, well, I don't know if most is a good character. Most in terms of the population centers, is very
mm,
pedestrian focused because there's such
yeah,
an extensive public transportation system. So the areas around these stations are tend to be, quite developed and designed for, accessibility and for pedestrians for easy walkability, which lends itself to having things like that, like the audio crosswalks, the audible crosswalks and all that. So again, it goes back to that whole thing where, like, the US, so much of it is designed for cars. If you don't have a car, makes your life so much more difficult for in most of the country, whereas in Japan, it's fairly easy to live in a place where you can get around without having to rely on a car.
That's good to know. And I imagine your Blind Japan project is very inspirational for a lot of people with visual impairments that are still interested in travel. And do you get contacted by other people that have visual impaired situations that are interested in traveling to Japan? Maybe you could lead a
Um,
tour at that point.
So, well, that would be cool. I haven't gotten any questions like that. I have been able to do a speech about my experiences for the Hawaii Association of the Blind. I also wrote an article recently for the councils of what's CCLVI. Oh, geez, Citizens of Low Vision International. I think it's a long one, but I think that's going to be published in the next few months. So I'm trying to get the word out about this, and sometimes it's doing an interview like this, sometimes it's writing an article, and the more that I do of this, I think the more opportunities will come.
Yes.
I have other ideas for things that I want to do, but like anything, these things take time, and whenever I get an opportunity to talk about my experiences and share them, especially with the visually impaired community, I'm always happy to do it.
Great, great. Well, this is going to be an epic trip, I imagine, and I know you're going to have a good time in Kyushu. I hope to see you down here.
Yeah, absolutely.
Terrific. And speaking of that, I know we're rapidly running out of time, but you've been traveling so extensively across the country. Can you give us a couple of your like hidden gems? You'll have to let the word out, but uh, that might be good, particularly for people that want to get off the beaten track of Tokyo, Osaka, Kyoto, somewhere else that you've been that you really enjoyed.
So, eh, what I would say, first of all, like, something that I've been okay, as I mentioned earlier, like, my the way that I do these trips is, like, I have to, take a train in the morning to where I left off, take the train back, take the train in the morning, take the train back. So I end up spending a lot of money on train rides, right? And so
Mhm.
this year, especially because Kyushu trains are more expensive than Honshu trains. The Shinkansen more expensive too on Kyushu for the most part. Like it, I started looking into these JR passes, not
Oh
the
yeah.
not the main pass that everybody talks about. That one too expensive. It's not worth it for most people. I would not recommend that. They raise the prices. It's just not
Yeah,
value
right.
anymore. But there are these regional passes, that work only for, like, the Tokaido Shinkansen or the Sanyo Shinkansen or the Kyushu Shinkansen. And so I'm probably gonna end up using those because I end up going back and forth in the same region, like, for, days straight, so it works out for me.
Sure.
But the point that I'm trying to make here is something that I would recommend people do is you show up in Tokyo, you do your thing in Tokyo, then maybe get, like, the 7-day pass for the Tokaido, Shinkansen, and I think if I remember correctly, it's only, like, 26,000, so, like, around, in current what, like, $200 or something like that
Yeah,
in
yeah.
at the current exchange rate, um,
Mhm.
which is a great deal if you actually use it most of those 7 days or the 7 days on the bullet train, right? So, you start out in Tokyo, and then you start exploring the whole way down to
Mhm.
Kansai. Right? And
Yes.
so Shizuoka, like we were talking about, has some great, like, cycling paths.
Yes.
Shizuoka was one of my favorite areas to walk through. There was the Senbon Matsubara is this 18-kilometer, like, cycling road, beautiful, like, along the coast of, Numazu City,
Oh, yeah.
in Shizuoka. Uh, just beautiful, well-kept, like, pure cycling road, no cars. And there's these pine trees there that are like bent over from the wind. It's really nice.
Mm.
And then if you keep going, there's also the Yaizu area,
Oh,
which
yes.
beautiful. There's like these four tunnels running along the coast with mountains on one side, and the ocean on the other, bridges. Um, beautiful. Like
Good.
I was not expecting that day. I showed up, I started walking and going, "Oh my god, this is beautiful tunnels," but it was raining too. It was one of the most memorable experiences. Yeah,
Terrific. Yeah, that's a
yeah,
gorgeous area. I rode the bicycle right through there, through those
yeah.
tunnels. Yeah, okay, good.
It's great.
Thank you for sharing that. Sid,
Mhm,
we have several listeners online, and I know this is a little challenging for you, but
mhm.
if you have any questions, I will read them to
Oh, yeah,
you.
yeah, let me know.
If,
Mhm,
please just put them in the chat here. We have a few minutes left, not too much time, but got any burning questions here for Tony R. Vega, please put them in there, and we'll have them answer you. That's great. Well, I got to tell you, I think what you're about to do in Kyushu is just going to be a fantastic experience. I know it will be, and you're going to have lots of people along the way that'll be very curious about that. Oh, I know one more thing I wanted to ask. I mean,
Yeah.
traditionally, people that are visually impaired in Japan have had a few specific occupations, like historically through time. Like, for example, I believe shiatsu, right? Massage. Uh,
Mhm.
I don't know anything else that's besides that that has traditionally been an
So
occupation.
shiatsu acupuncture are like the two big things. Yeah, and, when I taught at the school for the blind, I met a lot of individuals like that because, the school for the blind had elementary, junior high, and the high school all in one building, all in one school, but the high school had the typical, like, high school department, and then it had the vocational massage acupuncture department. So, there was a whole group of people that were studying, massage and acupuncture and so I got to meet a lot of people that were training to do that professional.
Whoa, whoa! Did
Mhm.
you actually try it?
Well, I got massaged once by a, student. I didn't actually do anything because it's just, it wasn't my place to do that.
Yeah, yeah. No, well, okay, I understand.
Yeah,
Good point.
yeah.
But that's fascinating, though. All right, good. Yeah, I really need to try that. I imagine
Mm.
it's. So, do you know the history of how that evolved? I
I
mean, why that
don't
became
know
a?
a detailed thing about that.
Oh,
I
oh,
think that's a
okay.
good thing to look into. I might be able to do a podcast about that, but no, I don't know that in detail.
Yeah, I would be curious about that. Well, and it's what's interesting that is the historical roots continue to this day, like you just explained.
Mm.
Terrific. Good. So, do we have any questions? Let's quickly check. Uh, oh, I don't see any at the moment, but okay. Well, if you have any time, any questions, now's the time. Put them in the chat, please. Otherwise, we will be saying goodbye to Tony and wishing him well on his upcoming journey across Kyushu, well, from Yamaguchi into Kyushu and then around
Mhm.
down to Kagoshima. Terrific. Good. Well, Tony, thank you. It's been a pleasure to speak with you, and I'm looking forward to keeping track of your progress on social media and then
Thank you,
follow
thank you, thank
your
you for having me on.
follow-ups
Yeah.
for podcasts. And if everything lines up, I'll try and find you on the way. I don't know how we'll do that,
Well,
but
that would
uh,
be amazing. Thank you.
okay, good, great. Well, thank you. If you have any final thoughts, please mention it to
Yeah,
our
no.
listeners here.
Well, thank you for having me on. It's always great to connect with other people doing content like this. But otherwise, if anybody's interested in my stuff, you can find it all at japanka.com. But if you want to see me on my walk, then Instagram, X. You can put in Tony R Vega into Google. All my stuff will pop up. Don't put in Tony Vega because then you'll get the salsa singer.
Hey, number one takeaway from this
Yes.
conversation. Got it. Tony R. Vega. All right, very good.
Yeah.
Terrific. Well, thank you. I've had fun interviewing you, and I appreciate this. I'm going to put all of this information into the final write-up, when along with the recording of today's discussion. So you can definitely source Tony R. Vegas on all sorts of sites. So thank you. Well, we're
Awesome.
saying hello or goodbye for today, and have a good afternoon in Hawaii.
Yes. Thank you.
All right. Goodbye.
Thanks for watching and or listening to another story from the Read My Lips series of podcasts on Real Gaijin. Tell us what you think and be sure to tune in again next time.
Yoo-hoo!